Alrighty, I am back home from upstate, which I was up there for the weekend for Thanksgiving with my daughter and my family. So while I was up there, I watched a few movies. Macabre by Lamberto Bava from 1980, also known as Macabro is the Italian title, and Frozen Terror is another title for it. Some of you know Mario Bava is one of my favorite directors of all time. He has 4 films in my top 40 movies of all time. He has 2 films in my top 10 movies of all time. So I'm a huge Bava fan, and I'm a big Lamberto Bava fan too, but I never got as much into Lamberto's stuff as his father. I don't think he's as great of a director as his father is. Well, was. But I do like to think of Lamberto as the wild card, maybe as well as Michele Soavi of the Italian directors throughout the 80s. We had Fulci, which was pretty much one of the biggest names. Same with Argento, and I mean, Bava Mario's last film was shot in 77. So for the 80s, we basically had Fulci, Argento, and Lamberto. I feel like Lamberto Bava's films were always the more out there, were always the more eccentric, the more batshit insane films were coming from Lamberto Bava, with his best movies obviously being Demons, Demons 2, also his most popular ones. And then we have his amazing giallo, one of my favorites, A Blade in the Dark. Delirium is another good giallo by him. And then he did a lot of assistant director work and screenwriting work for a bunch of people, including his father. He worked on A Bay of Blood, Hatchet for the Honeymoon, all of Mario Bava's later movies, Shock, Lisa and the Devil, Kill Baby Kill. I'm pretty sure all of those Lamberto helped his father and was assistant director for. He was also assistant director for Cannibal Holocaust by Diodato and several other movies, including Argento's Tenebrae. So this guy lived and breathed horror movies by this point in his life after his father passed. And this was his directorial debut. This was actually co-written by Papi Avati, who directed one of the best giallos of all time, The House with Laughing Windows from 76. If you haven't seen that movie, check that film out. It's an excellent giallo. He also directed the film Zetter. I know I saw that once. It's pretty good. And he also co-wrote the screenplay for the really fucked up film from the 70s, Salo, or 120 Days of Sodom. And the score for this movie, while decent, it's nothing great, and I didn't recognize the composer's name from any other Italian films or giallos from the time. So there's some Lamberto Bava background. For this movie particularly, we have Jane Baker is the main character, played by Bernice Steggers, who I don't know her from anything else except for Extra a few years later. She plays the mom, which if you haven't seen Extra, that's another batshit insane movie. Check that one out. And Extra 2 and 3. But she plays Jane Baker, a woman who is having an affair on her husband, and she also has a daughter and a son. She's constantly sneaking out and having affairs with this guy named Fred. So while she's out having an affair one day, she gets a call from her daughter saying that her son drowned in the bathtub. So they start racing home, Fred, who she's having an affair with, and Jane, and they get in a car accident, and the lover is killed. Jane ends up surviving and ends up living in a psychiatric hospital for a year until she's released. After she gets out, she ends up living at a boarding house run by a blind man named Robert. And then a bunch of weird stuff starts happening. And Robert starts hearing moaning and noises and just freaky stuff coming from Jane's room. And since he's blind, he has to obviously use his other senses and try to figure out exactly what's going on in this boarding house of his. That's all you need to know going into it. I gotta say, I haven't seen this film in quite a while. And it's a good movie. It has really good cinematography, which should be expected from Lamberto, even with his first film here, his debut. just from all the assistant director work he did for his father and everything I mentioned earlier. The acting from Bernie Steggers, it's good for the most part. The dubbing, though, in this movie, and we all know people who are fans of Italian horror and giallo films, all of them were recorded without sound, and all the dialogue would be dubbed in later. The dubbing in this movie is pretty bad. It's pretty bad, especially for an Italian horror film. But this is a sick movie. There is a lot of disturbing stuff in here. It can be a bit slow. The pacing is the biggest issue with this movie. Same with the fact that it's a very restrained film. And for Bava's debut movie, I want to say it makes sense, but it doesn't really because he worked with his dad all the time. So I don't know. This one is lacking a few things that later Lamberto Bava films from the decade would have. The twist is cool though, and it's very disturbing, like I said. And you may see it coming way ahead of time, but it's still fucked up. So that's Lamberto Bava's Macabre.